There is a person in your family who, by the rules of biology, should not exist. You have met her. Maybe she is still here. Maybe she is not. You are sitting in her kitchen. You are small. Your feet do not reach the floor. She is moving around behind you, doing something with her hands, and the room smells like whatever she is making. She is telling you a story you have heard before, and she is telling it slightly wrong, and you do not correct her. She is old. She stopped being able to have children a very long time ago. And by every rule that governs almost every other animal on this planet, that should have been the end of her. Because here is the strange thing about the woman in that kitchen: almost nothing else alive gets to be her. We take grandparents completely for granted. Of course, we have them. Everybody has them. But step back and look at the animal kingdom, and you find something that stops you cold. We are just about the only ones. And nobody, not even the scientists who have spent their careers on this, fully agrees on why. So let us start with the fact that makes this whole thing weird. There are more than 5,000 species of mammal on Earth. Only 6 of them go through menopause. 6. And when you look at the list of who else is on it, it gets stranger, because it is not the animals you would expect. It is not our closest relatives. It is not the apes. It is whales, killer whales, belugas, narwhals, pilot whales, five whales, and you. Everything else on this planet, more or less, does the same thing. It has babies until it dies. That is the deal. That is what life does. A female chimpanzee, our closest living cousin, keeps having babies right up to the end, and she usually does not make it far past her 30s. Elephants have calves into their 60s. Some whales are still breeding in their 90s. There is no retirement in nature. You breed and then you stop, and stopping means you are done. And then there is us. A woman stops being able to have children somewhere around 50, and then she gets up the next morning, and the morning after that, and she keeps going. Healthy, strong, useful, for another 20, 30, 40 years. Evolution is not sentimental. It does not pay for things it does not use. So why on earth would it pay for that? Now, you might be thinking, hang on, that is just modern life. Good food, good doctors, comfortable chairs. Of course, we live longer now. That is a reasonable thought. It is also wrong. In the 1980s, a group of researchers went to live with the Hadza, a community in Tanzania who still hunt and gather much of their food. No hospitals, no pharmacies, and what they found there was the same pattern. Roughly 4 in 10 Hadza women live past 50, and the ones who do routinely go on into their 70s. The long life after children is not something we bought at a chemist. It is built in. It was already there. But the researchers noticed something else while they were watching, and this is the part that changed everything. The Hadza eat a lot of tubers, roots, and these things are buried deep, and getting them out is hard work. Children can pick berries just fine, but they simply are not strong enough to dig a good root out of hard ground. They need somebody to do it for them. So the researchers started tracking the children, who was feeding them, and how well they were growing. And what they found was that a child's growth followed its mother's work. When mom was out foraging hard, the child put on weight. Simple enough. But then the mother would have a new baby. And a new baby takes everything. She is nursing, she is carrying, she's not out digging roots anymore. So what happens to the child who has already been weaned? Here's what happens. That child's growth stops following its mother, and it starts following its grandmother. Sit with that for a second. When mom could not feed the older child, the old woman picked up the slack. She dug the roots. She kept that child growing. And because she did, the mother could get on with having the next baby sooner than she otherwise could have. More babies, surviving, faster. And that is the idea that came out of it, the one they called the grandmother hypothesis. That old age is not a leftover. That evolution did not tolerate grandmothers. It selected for them. Because a woman who stopped having her own children and started feeding her daughter's children was, in the cold arithmetic of genes, doing something incredibly clever. She was still winning, just through somebody else. which would mean that the woman in that kitchen is not a bonus. She is a strategy. And if that is true, we should be able to see it, not in a theory, in the ground. So a couple of researchers went looking and they did something quite clever. They took more than 750 fossil humans spanning 3 million years and they used the wear on the teeth to sort them. Young adults in one pile, older adults in the other. Then they just counted. What fraction of people in each era actually made it to old age? For most of our history, the answer is not many. Old people were rare. You died young, and that was normal. And then, around 30,000 years ago, something breaks. The number of people living long enough to be grandparents jumps, not by a bit. It roughly quadruples. Suddenly, for the first time, the world is full of old people. And here is what makes the hair stand up on your arms. Look at what else is happening at exactly that moment. That is the window when we start painting the walls of caves, when the tools get beautiful and complicated, when people start wearing jewelry and burying each other properly and doing all the strange, marvelous, pointless things that make us us. The old people show up and the culture explodes. Now, the researchers who found this are careful, and so are we. They are showing that these two things happen together. They cannot prove one caused the other, but they think the link is real, and the reason they give is worth hearing. Think about what an old person actually is in a world with no books. She is the library. She is the only one who remembers the drought 40 years ago, and which valley still had water in it. She knows which plant stops a wound bleeding because she watched her own mother use it. She remembers what the herds did the last time winter came early. Nobody wrote any of that down. There was nothing to write it down on. The only place that knowledge could live was inside a person. And the longer that person lived, the more the group knew. A band of humans with a 60-year-old in it has 60 years of memory. A band without one has 20. Which one would you rather be born into? So we started keeping our old people, and I want to show you what that actually looked like because we have found one of them. In 1957, in a cave called Shanidar in the mountains of Iraqi Kurdistan, archaeologists dug up the skeleton of a Neanderthal man. They nicknamed him Nandi. He died somewhere around 45,000 years ago, and he was, for his world, an old man. He was also, frankly, a wreck. At some point when he was young, something hit him extremely hard on the left side of the face. It almost certainly blinded that eye. His right arm was damaged so badly that he lost the whole lower half of it, below the elbow. His right leg and foot were injured too, which means he walked with a heavy, painful limp. His joints were riddled with degenerative disease. And then, in 2017, researchers went back and looked at his ears. And they found bony growths deep in both ear canals, the kind that would have left him almost completely deaf. So put him together. One arm, one eye, a ruined leg, and he cannot hear. Now, remember where he is living. He is living in a landscape with cave lions and leopards and hyenas in it. A deaf man cannot hear what is walking up behind him. There is no version of this where that man hunts. There is no version where he goes out and gathers his own food. He could not have survived out there for a single season. And here's the thing that gets me. Every single one of those injuries had healed. None of them killed him. He lived on and on for years with all of it, which means for years, somebody was feeding him. Somebody was walking at his pace. Somebody kept him warm and kept him with the group when by every brutal calculation of survival, the sensible thing was to leave him behind. They did not leave him behind. Nobody knows if that was love or duty or because of what he knew. Most researchers who look at those bones read it as care, though I will be honest that people do argue about how much a skeleton can really tell you about kindness. But you cannot argue with the healing. Somebody kept him alive. And now we come to the part where I have to be straight with you. Because I have just spent 10 minutes telling you that grandmothers built us. And the truth is that scientists are still fighting about it, quite hard. The main problem is maths. A grandmother shares half her genes with her own child, but only a quarter with her grandchild. So every time she gives up having one more baby of her own, she has to save roughly two grandchildren just to break even. And when researchers built computer models to test whether grandmothering alone could do enough to stretch out the human lifespan, some of them found it just was not powerful enough. The numbers did not add up. So other explanations have piled in. One says the whole thing is about men, that once older, high status men could keep fathering children, evolution pushed male lifespans longer. And because the genes for a long life are not carried only by men, women got dragged along with them, living longer without being able to have children any longer. Another says it comes down to who men chose. That if men consistently paired with younger women, then over a very long time, faults in older women's fertility would simply pile up unchecked because nothing was selecting them out. Menopause, on that reading, is not a gift. It is an accident. And another says it is simple protection, that having a baby gets more dangerous as you age, so stopping early is just a woman's body deciding to keep her alive for the children she already has. 4 explanations, all serious, all defended by people who have spent their lives on this, and not one of them can fully account for you. That is not a failure of science. That is the size of the mystery. These arguments are still going, decades later, because the thing they are arguing about is genuinely, deeply strange. You are so unusual that we cannot agree on how you happened. And even the Hadza research has a wrinkle in it. When they looked closely at who was actually doing the digging, only about half of those helpful old women were the child's real grandmother. The rest were just other old women in the group, which honestly makes the whole thing bigger, not smaller. It was never really about one magic relative. It was about old people, plural, standing around, unable to have any more children of their own, and quietly keeping everybody else's children alive. So we do not know why. Not for certain. That question is still open, but look at what is not in question. You come from one of the only species on this entire planet that has old people in it. Not old people waiting to die. Old people living, working, remembering, feeding somebody. Everywhere else, more or less, life ends when your ability to make more life ends. We are the strange ones. We built an extra room onto the end of the house, and then we filled it with the people who taught us everything we know. And 45,000 years ago, in a cave in the mountains, a group of people looked at a man who could not hunt, could not hear, could not see properly, and could not feed himself. And they fed him anyway. For years. Nobody needed a hypothesis to do that. So the next time you're sitting in that kitchen, listening to a story you have already heard, told slightly wrong, and you're nodding along and not correcting her, understand what you are actually part of. You are doing the oldest human thing there is. We keep our old. We always have.